gamers, I will not hesitate to admit that modern day gaming isn't perfect, but it's easy to just get up and say, oh, modern games this, modern games that, live service games this, live service games that. But a lot of the time we forget to look on the bright side of things, you get me? This isn't about being optimistic, this is about being real. I personally don't hate modern games, and I don't hate live service games. Or to clarify, I'm gonna say I don't hate every modern game, and I don't hate every live service game. Even though a lot of modern and live service games do many things I dislike or disagree with, to the point that there are just some games you will never see me buy or play. You see Ghost of Tsushima, I love that game, yeah. I love the fact that it's a high quality modern single player game. Sucker Punch really did a fantastic job with that game. Sometimes I wonder if they knew that they were working on a masterpiece the whole time during its development. The amount of research, attention to detail and love they put into that game deserves to be praised forever, and I would absolutely love a live service Ghost of Tsushima game. And I don't mean similar to the survival mode, the Legends update that came to the game after launch. I wasn't a big fan of that mode, to be honest. I mean a live service game similar to Red Dead Online, but I'd also want a bit of Division 2 elements mixed into it. For example, the game is still based in the open world of Ghost of Tsushima, but every season you can hunt down a new general or wanted bandits or a hyper skilled ronin with a new story to go along with the hunt. And on top of that, there would be other new missions you could take on after interacting with familiar NPCs along with random events.
We're paid to make it that way. Now you're a dead man.
And maybe mixing some base building as well. I would love all of this just as long as it's done in the right way and it doesn't take away from or delay any sequels in the works, you get me? If a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima had a live service game after the main campaign similar to what I just described under those conditions, I wouldn't complain at all. So today we're going to be looking at what modern games get right and what modern games get wrong. And this time we're going to start off with what modern games get right. Visuals. I would argue that the best thing modern games have going for them are the visuals, and I don't just mean graphics, I mean everything to do with visuals overall, from the wide variety of art styles that we've seen even on the indie scene with games like Death Star and Hollow Knight, to AAA games like Forbidden West. And even though I'm not a fan of that game, I did like Horizon Zero Dawn, and even when Zero Dawn came out, I was impressed by the visuals of that game. I remember looking at that game for the first time and saying, this looks so next gen, this looks like some PS5 graphics, because most of the games on PS4 don't look as good as Zero Dawn. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great example of a game with visuals done right. The game has lots of small details to the environment and characters that all add up and make the game highly immersive. The visual details in Red Dead Redemption 2 aren't just for show, they add depth to the game. For example, when you go in a house and start looting it, you can open each cabinet, drawer and cupboard, and you might find some canned peaches, a cigar, some chocolate, treasure, or even nothing at all whenever you open one. Everything in Red Dead is so detailed that you can look at the can of peaches or anything you find and know exactly what it is. You don't have to wonder if it's a can of strawberries or a can of peaches. You can look at your gun and know it needs cleaning because the game is so full of the right visual detail where it actually makes sense to add details. Visuals of Red Dead Redemption 2 show that there's a reason for this game to look as beautiful and realistic as it does. New content updates. I love when modern games get new content updates, whether it's for a new season for a live service game or some DLC for a single player game. Now you can look at this from another perspective and say DLC in a single player game should have been packaged with the full game at launch. But what if you're satisfied with the full experience of the full game? You felt like you got your money's worth and you love it so much that you want more and you would gladly take more. And by chance the developers decided to go beyond their initial budget for the original game to make more content for it. In that scenario, I can only be happy for more content, whether it's free or priced fairly. The Witcher 3 is a super long game in my opinion, and the DLC for that game could have been broken up and sold as a separate game based on the high quality content and even just how much new content was made available. Now if a game studio decided to cut content before launch to sell separately as DLC, then that's a whole new scenario. But overall, in a lot of situations, more content for a game is usually a good thing in my eyes, and at the end of the day, you don't have to play the new content, you can move on if you want to. Amazing hardware. I'm mainly talking about consoles when I say that modern gaming has amazing hardware, because a super powerful PC is just a super powerful PC at the end of the day. Tons of PC gamers usually use mouse and keyboard to play games anyway. Now I'm talking about hardware like the DualSense controller. The DualSense controller is an amazing piece of hardware, and the DualSense didn't just come out of nowhere. It took a lot of improvements and refinements over the years to the original DualShock controller to get to the DualSense, as well as the fact that over the years technology has only improved in other areas to make the DualSense possible. Another great piece of hardware is the Nintendo Switch. The fact that a console can go from handheld to a dock unlocked mode and be played on your TV is straight up amazing. I mean, it might not seem like anything big because we're all used to it now. We're all used to having these great devices, these smartphones, these gadgets. They're all just regular devices to us. But if I could go back in time and show my kid self a Nintendo Switch back when I was playing Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow and Silver on the original Game Boy, that would blow my mind, I'm telling you. Even back when the Nintendo Wii came out, the Wii remote was something impressive to me, even though I wasn't a big fan of it. I've always just preferred normal controllers. And don't even mention the fact that you can take off the Joy-Cons and use each of them as a separate controller to play a multiplayer game with someone else. So you can see that the hardware for games has always been on a different path of evolution from the software and games that we get nowadays. I can only say I'm impressed with modern gaming hardware. And even though the original Nintendo Switch is quite old now, the most important thing about it is how it's inspired PC gaming going forward. Like nowadays, you have handheld PCs with similar hardware to the Nintendo Switch. And I don't mean in terms of power, I mainly mean in terms of convenience and portability. Social interactions in online gaming. A lot of modern games have an online component to them, which usually includes voice chat and in-game text chat, and that being a feature of most online games we play nowadays, I would say it's pretty much become the standard. Nowadays, if a game doesn't have voice chat in it, then I find that to be a bit weird and a bit bothersome in a lot of cases. But voice chat with another player in an online game is a social interaction, and modern games create the opportunity for more social interactions with players from all over the globe, which can lead to friendships, new connections, or even intimate relationships in real life. But the brutal reality is that it seems to most often lead to toxic behavior in competitive games. Being able to communicate and strategize with your teammates in the heat of battle can determine if you win or lose a match. And when I really think about a lot of games that don't have voice chat in them, it makes me appreciate games that do have voice chat in them as an option to communicate in them even more. Accessibility. Nowadays, more modern games have accessibility options like never before, and with all this new technology available to help developers create more accessibility options and controllers so that more gamers with disabilities around the world can participate more comfortably is a plus for modern gaming. One game in recent memory that went above and beyond with accessibility features is The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 features more than 60 accessibility settings with expanded options focused on fine motor hearing, as well as completely new features that benefit low vision and blind players. And if modern game developers are considering providing more accessibility features in more games, who could really complain about that? F2P games, or free to play. Having the option to play a free game can only be considered a plus in my book, no matter how messed up the game is. At the end of the day, you don't have to play it, and you have nothing to lose really by trying it out. As long as you can access the game and have fun, and it's not a pay to win game, then I don't really see the problem. At the end of the day, no one's forcing you to play a game or buy skins, but it is good if it's there for you to access it if that is your desire. Some parents and just some gamers in general can't always go and buy the latest game, so when the latest game turns out to be free, everybody wins. But I personally would rather just go and buy my games, just because if you know, you know, if you don't know, you don't know. Rest in peace if you don't know. Now let's look at what modern gaming gets wrong. Sequels are more of the same. I would say a majority of AAA sequels in recent memory have received mixed views when it comes to the sequel, due to the fact that a lot of sequels get called DLC nowadays, because a lot of games just never really evolve whenever a sequel comes out. It's like you're gonna get the exact same gameplay that the first game had with minor improvements, and they rarely feel fresh and brand new. To be precise, a good number of the most anticipated sequels reuse the same map, the exact same map from the first game, or the prequel I should say. It's like this: imagine you spent so much time playing a game and you explored every nook and cranny of that world, right? And then you finally beat it and you give it a rest for a good while, and then the sequel comes out a few years later and you're on the exact same map, but obviously a few things have been added and a few things have been changed, but it's mostly the same map, the same environment, the same biomes. In those scenarios, I completely understand why gamers would call a sequel DLC, especially at first sight, and I personally always want a mostly new experience whenever I play a sequel to a game. The sequel and the prequel should differentiate themselves significantly from each other in terms of environment at the very least, and gameplay should always feel like a step forward and an upgrade, but overall, based on what I'm seeing, modern games get this wrong. Battle Pass. You should have known this one was coming. You should have knew that this one had to be in the wrong section. I think a lot of gamers will agree with me that modern games get battle passes wrong, because the first thing about these battle passes is that a lot of them take a long time to grind out. You get me? Especially when you look at mainstream games like Call of Duty, Diablo 4, Overwatch, and Brawlhalla. The fact that you have to buy the battle pass with real world money in most games is a big L. It's like these developers don't care about the fact that many gamers want to play other games as well. A battle pass doesn't need to take 100 hours to fully unlock, doesn't need to take 50 hours or 80 hours to unlock. They could easily make the battle pass a maximum of 8 hours to unlock. It's like every game with a battle pass wants your money, your time and your soul, and at the end of the day, if you invest in a battle pass, you want to complete it because usually you can get back some of your currency by completing it in a lot of games. But I genuinely think modern games get this wrong, paying extra for early access. Paying extra money for early access to a game, especially if it's like 3 days to a week early access, unless you're a content creator, I don't really see the point. Or maybe if it's a game where you definitely need that 3-day head start so much that it's gonna make a massive difference to your account and gameplay experience. But if it's a game like that, I probably don't even want to play it. That just sounds messed up if you need a 3-day head start just to have a good experience. Like seriously, what kind of game is that? That sounds more like a rat race than a game. If most gamers need an extra 3 days, then that doesn't sound like a game, bro. I honestly do not want to participate in that game. I do not want to play that game if it's gonna have such a massive impact that you feel the need to spend an extra $30 just so you can play the game 3 days early. And if you're not even a content creator, that doesn't make any sense to me, bro. I see a lot of modern games offering that as an option, and they straight up get that wrong if you ask me. Death of old IPs. With these long video game development times and high development costs, I totally understand why developers would want to do their best to make sure that their game sells well and their game hits. I think a lot of old IPs could be reshaped and evolved to make good modern games. I remember when Ubisoft released a game called Immortals Phoenix Rising, and the first trailer that I saw of that game, I think they were calling it Gods and Monsters. Now, I'm all about embracing new IPs and all of that, right? But the game released and it was just trying to be Breath of the Wild basically, where alternatively, Ubisoft could have spent that manpower, brainpower, money, time and resources to revive an IP like Rayman instead. Imagine if that was an open world Rayman game instead of Immortals Phoenix Rising. It probably would have sold a lot better, but for some reason Ubisoft just wanted to follow the trend when they have some amazing IPs under their belt. There are lots of IPs that I could name, but seriously, I just think a lot of them need to be revived and improved for modern day gamers instead of left to collect dust or only be featured in crossovers. Death of split screen multiplayer. Split screen multiplayer isn't entirely extinct yet, but a lot of gamers can relate whenever someone talks about split screen gaming being some of the most fun multiplayer sessions they ever have. A lot of modern games don't even feature couch co-op or split screen multiplayer, and really and truly that's just straight up sad, because it's like the devs either just don't care or they're directly trying to isolate gamers or just make things harder and squeeze more money from gamers. Because if you want to go see your friend or your friend wants to come and see you to chill out and play some games, they have to bring their game with them if you want to play certain games in multiplayer. And to be honest, I don't ever want to see a day when a Call of Duty game gets released that I end up buying thinking it has split screen multiplayer in it, only to find out that it doesn't, because I expect it to have split screen multiplayer, otherwise I am unlikely to buy it. Digital only games. I've been noticing more and more games slowly creeping up with developers announcing that their game will only be available digitally, as the gaming industry as a whole slowly tries to push every gamer exclusively towards digital game purchases. I am not a fan of digital game purchases most times, although I do buy some of my games digitally. I prefer to get a physical copy of my game. I like being able to get my game and have the physical CD and get the cover art and other things in the case. Sometimes games don't really come with anything in the case, but that's okay. I still want my CD, and I don't care if some think CDs are things of the past. I want my physical version of the game. Whenever I went out and bought a Rockstar game in the past, there was always a map in the case, and I just loved that. When I bought Red Dead Redemption 2, a map came in the case. When I bought GTA 5, a map came in the case. When I got GTA San Andreas as a kid, a map came in the case. I don't ever want to see physical games go away, even if I have to download a majority of the game after I put the CD in the console. The more options gamers have, the better it is for us. Paying to play online. Paying to play online mainly applies to consoles, because on PC, you don't have to pay to play your games online. While there ain't really anything wrong with subscription services that offer you a catalog of games on a monthly basis, being forced to pay in order to play your games online is just daylight robbery in a way, because games are more expensive on current gen consoles than they are on PC. If anything, they should be cheaper on consoles than on PC. I understand there are costs to maintaining servers, and there are also less cheaters on consoles as well. There's also the fact that some consoles are sold at a loss, but I didn't tell you to sell your console at a loss. We as console players should be able to play our games that we purchased online for free, hands down, no questions asked. Online only games. The idea of buying a game that you can only play if you have access to an internet connection is straight up garbage, and I personally think it should be required by law to make sure that every game has an offline mode. Unless it's a free to play game, it should be mandatory for every single full price game you spend your hard earned money on to buy, and I don't even think anything more needs to be said when it comes to that topic. Until next time, peace.